All right. Looks like everything's getting good to go here. Um, I apologize in advance for the sniffling and throat clearing. I have been having a really bad time with my allergies for the last couple of days. Went looking through some old clothes. Think they had dog hair on them, so I'm just miserable right now. But yeah. So today, the thing I would like to do is a little different than what we've been doing. As I'd like to take a look at a more practical use case for Chat GPT. Um, the project that actually started this YouTube channel was is called the Forever Adventures Library. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still going on. And the goal of that is to create a library of never-ending choose-your-own-adventure books that is currently being housed in a Discord server, but will eventually get its own website that I am building. And actually, you can see here I've got a chat with ChatGPT about building a forum website. And ChatGPT has actually been helping me do that. I've never built a website before, so I don't really have any idea what I'm doing, but it's been a fun little learning experience so far. So, today, what we're going to do is we are going to write the first stage of a couple of books that we can add to the library. And because right now we've only got a couple, we've actually got an individual who's going to start hopefully our third book in the next few days, who just joined us. His name is Cosmo. Um, and so I would like to just have some more things for people to interact with when they come join the Discord, because it's difficult to want to write if your genre isn't being represented. So I'd like to maybe get a mystery book out of the way. We've already got a fantasy book. We've got what's going to turn out to be sort of a actually, I'll just read. It's kind of a war story from the perspective of a small recon team. We have a book that's going to be from the third person perspective of a dog, which is going to be named Bloodhound. So maybe getting like a mystery story in there. Maybe we could even start a horror story. I don't I don't know. Maybe somebody will come up with some ideas for us, but I just want to see how good of just a one-page story starter we can get out of Chat GPT. How much can we talk to it, get an idea of what we're looking for, and then get it to really output a quality page, and then go ahead and get that loaded up to the Discord so that we can have some additional books to read. So, without further ado, let's get started on that. Um, Somebody has already expressed an interest in mystery on the Discord channel, so I don't necessarily want to step on their toes if they plan on writing one and getting one started. So I think actually I'm going to stay away from the mystery, but we don't currently have anything sci-fi. I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I'm a big fan especially of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is one of my all-time favorite series of books. Uh, I particularly like the author's writing style because of the way one of the things that first struck me in the first book is the way the author describes how terrible the poetry of the alien race that picks him up. It's been years and years since I read it. I don't remember the name of the alien race. But how he describes how terrible the poetry of this race is by comparing that to how ugly this other alien race is. But you have no frame of reference for how ugly that other alien races, right? Because you've never seen one; they don't exist. It's totally fiction, but it still creates this image in your head of just how terrible this poetry is. And I really like that about that author is they're constantly comparing things to other things that just don't exist, and so you have no frame of reference, and the whole time you're just trying to keep up with this insane story about all of this stuff going on in the universe that it's wonderful. I really love it. If you've never read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I really really recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It is difficult to read in that it constantly makes you feel like you're behind. Um, like you're trying to catch up to the story. Like if you just read the next page, maybe you'll understand, or if you just read the page after that, maybe you'll understand. And you constantly just feel like, even though the characters seem to have no idea what's going on, you even feel like you're kind of behind them, like they're just dragging you along with the story, and you're just desperately running to try and keep up. And so I really, really enjoyed that. So let's do something sci-fi. Um, should we? There's a lot of different options here. I mean, sci-fi as a genre is pretty broad because it sort of encompasses all of the other genres within itself, right? Because you could have sci-fi fantasy, you could have sci-fi history, taking, historical events even from here on Earth and then adapting them into uh, future events or adapting them into sort of a space setting. You could have right sci-fi mystery. You've got sci-fi war. You've got all of this different stuff, right? You've got Starship Troopers. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Firefly TV show. You've just got all this. Firefly actually did a really good job of expressing just how broad the sci-fi genre is. I mean, you've got planets where it's sort of like the old west. You've got planets that are much much more advanced. You've got all kinds of different stuff going on in that TV show, and it really expresses how different something under that same sci-fi umbrella can be. Um, so we've got some decisions to make about what our story is going to be about. I would like to have something that is more Firefly-esque because it leaves an opportunity for things to diverge more so that the choose your own adventure aspect of the story has the opportunity to be much much broader and have a lot more forks that take you to much more drastically different places, right? Just because you're creating a choose your own adventure book doesn't necessarily mean you're pursuing vastly different avenues, right? If you choose to have a character um, go with one person on an adventure or maybe go with a different person on a similar adventure, you're still going on that same adventure, right? When you're confined to a single world or a single continent or a single country within a continent for your story, then you're going to end up, those stories aren't going to diverge that drastically, especially not initially. And so with a sci-fi tale where you have literally an entire imaginary universe to cover, you have this really wonderful opportunity to have drastic divergence, right? It's not those different planets can all have drastically different feels and experiences, and so going to different places is going to really change what the story is going to be about. So we'll do. I think we'll do something that's got a little bit more of a Firefly feel to it. I don't want to totally rip that off, so probably the hmm, what could be an interesting premise? We actually have a more recent example of the sort of Firefly-like story in The Expanse, if you've seen The Expanse, much longer running series, and didn't include, Firefly, you go to a lot of different planets, and in The Expanse, really, it was just Earth, Mars, and then the ring of space stations. And so there was a little less divergence and a little less um, broad expression there, but still a very similar, especially once they started using the teleports or whatever. I don't think I ever actually finished this season, but so let's think. I like the idea actually of having a series of warp, or I forget what they called the rings in The Expanse, but something similar to that, that give us the ability to travel extreme distances, potentially even changing where we are in time. For example, if the light that you see, right, from distant stars is light that originated from that star potentially billions of years ago. And so if you were using a system of travel, there is reason to believe that part of that mechanism could involve traveling to the point in time that you can actually see. So what if we made or started a story about Earth developing the technology to to sort of ride a photon of light back to its source. And in so doing, they would actually go back in time when they traveled to distant planets and solar systems in the universe, which would make a lot more sense, right? Because if you traveled to the location of the light that we see, right, you would actually be traveling to where that star was billions of years ago, or millions of years ago, or hundreds of years ago, or however many light years away it is. So you would never actually be traveling to the correct position. You would have to calculate where it was going to be based on how long it had been traveling and its trajectory at the time that you saw it. So it would actually be really, really difficult to try and get to one of these places because they're not where we think they are anymore. But if you were using a technology that used that photon of light and sort of rewound it to take you back to where it came from, then you would end up back in time. And then you would ride that same photon. Well, you wouldn't ride the same photon because it would leave as soon as you got back. So how would you get back? Because you'd want to return to Earth in our time, right? So you would have to be able to calculate another photon of light that was going to travel back to Earth that wasn't going to be obstructed by anything, right? Because you want to be able to ride that photon all the way. You know any photon of light that reaches Earth, right, in its rewind would absolutely reach the planet that it originated from because it got to Earth, so there was obviously no obstruction. But calculating a new photon of light, ooh, that's really, really interesting. I like that a lot. And we are definitely going to run with this concept. So how do we turn this into a story? How do you explain all of that within the first page so that anybody who writes sections after would understand the mechanics of the time travel? And what would we call the people who actually went back in time and traveled to distant places using this technology? We could call them something like light riders or star skimmers or I like star skimmer a little bit. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Well, let's just generate a prompt. So let's, oops, on the wrong computer screen. All right, let's write the first page of a story about a group of scientists who ride photons back in time and travel to distant planets, travel to the past on distant planets. The group of scientists huddled around the glowing console, staring intently at the readouts displaying the energy levels of the photon accelerator. They had been working on this project for years, and today was the day they were finally going to test their theory. Dr. Samantha Williams, the lead scientist, took a deep breath and pressed the button to initiate the experiment. There was a blinding flash of light, and then everything went black. When the scientists came to, they found themselves in a strange alien landscape. The sky was a deep purple, and towering spires of rock rose up from the ground. They quickly realized they had somehow traveled back in time, and that they were on a distant planet. The team quickly set to work, taking samples and making observations of the strange new world around them. They were amazed by the diversity of life they found, and they knew that this trip would change the course of science forever. As they journeyed deeper into the past, they encountered all manner of strange and wondrous creatures. They battled giant beasts, traversed treacherous landscapes, and made discoveries that would have been impossible in their own time. But as they delved deeper into the past, they began to realize that their journey had consequences. They were changing the course of history, and they had to decide whether to continue on their quest for knowledge or to return to their own time and try to undo the damage they had done. The team of scientists knew that their choice would have a profound impact on the future, and they were determined to make the right one. As they prepared to make their decision, they knew one thing for sure. This was a journey that they would never forget. Okay. So this is awful, right? We're definitely not keeping this. Because so one of the things about using Chat GPT to write is that Chat GPT likes to resolve things. And so even if you tell it to write the first page of a story, it's going to try and write an entire story, right? It wants to get to an end point. It doesn't like to leave things on cliffhangers or anything like that. And that doesn't really work for a choose your own adventure book where we honestly want to end things on a cliffhanger or an inflection point so that people can write interesting branches to that story based on the decisions that the characters are making. And so, this is utter garbage, and we're not going to keep it. Um, so one of the things that we're going to need to change is let's end the page at a crossroads. So the characters are about to make some sort of decision. Actually, I guess it sort of did stop it at a decision point. That's actually kind of interesting. But I don't like this decision point. Mostly because it's trying to imply, they went back in time and they went to a distant planet, but then this entire story is basically about them being on this planet. Um, this is really bad. I really don't like it. So let's try and explain the idea to the AI a little better. Okay. Let's talk about a sci-fi story idea where scientists ride photons of light back to their origin to travel to distant planets to travel to distant planets at the time the photon was created. Let's see. Oh, it hates me. What do we got going on here? Punch this in. Let's see what it gives me. That sounds like an interesting science fiction story idea. The concept of using photons as a means of transportation is known as quantum teleportation in physics, and it is based on the idea that particles can be in multiple states or locations at the same time. In your story, the scientists could use this phenomenon to ride the photons back to their origin, effectively traveling back in time to the moment the photon was created. From there, they could potentially journey to distant planets that no longer exist in the present time. The story could explore the challenges and consequences of time travel as well as the ethical dilemmas of altering the past. Um, this is awesome. This is exactly what I'm looking for, except we don't necessarily want to consider altering the past, right? Because we're altering the past of different planets. That's not going to have a whole lot of impact on Earth. Even traveling to the nearest star, right? We're going to be traveling years back in time. So maybe, I don't know, maybe some of the closest solar systems, we would be able to observe that impact in some sort of meaningful way. But definitely if we were traveling to a distant star, then there would be no meaning there for us, right? If you traveled a million years back in time to some distant star, some other place in the galaxy, then it would be extremely difficult to be concerned about the impact that would have when you got back to Earth a million light years away or whatever. Um, so I don't know. Maybe we'll start the story, or maybe somebody will branch the story to be talking about just going to Alpha Centauri or something. But I like that it seems to understand what I'm trying to get at here. So let's write the first page of this story about the first trip that was taken. Let's use this trip as a way to explain how the travel works So future pages can. Hmm. Well, let's just leave it at that. Explain how the travel works. Sure, here's the first page for your science fiction story. The control room was a flurry of activity as the team of scientists prepared for their first trip. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the lead researcher, stood in the front of the room, her eyes fixed on the large monitor displaying the countdown. She took a deep breath and turned to her team. All right, everyone, this is it. We've been working towards this moment for years, and it's finally here. Are we ready? There was a chorus of affirmations from the team as they checked and double-checked their equipment. Dr. Rodriguez smiled and nodded, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. Good. Now let's go over the plan one more time. We'll be using our newly developed photon accelerator to ride a beam of light back to its origin. This will effectively transport us back in time to the moment the photon was created. From there, we'll be able to travel to any planet within the photon's range that existed at the time. She gestured to the monitor, where a map of the galaxy was displayed. Our target planet is Kepler 7, an Earth-like planet located 12 light-years away. It's believed to have been home to an advanced civilization before it was destroyed by a supernova. We'll have exactly 1 hour on the planet before we have to return. Team listened intently, their eyes wide with anticipation. Dr. Rodriguez took one last look around the room before turning to the countdown. All right, let's do this. Synchronize watches. The team reached for their watches and pressed the button in unison. The countdown hit 0, and the accelerator hummed to life. A beam of light shot out from the device, enveloping the team in a bright, blinding light, and just like that, they were gone. The story will then continue with how the scientists experience the travel and what they find on the planet, and if they return back safely or not. Okay, this is fantastic. I really, really like this. Um, it explains very well what we're trying to get at with writing the photon. I like, man, I like this story a lot. This is really great. I I was expecting it to be more difficult to get it to understand and to write this story. Now, obviously, from a technical standpoint, this isn't necessarily the best written thing ever. But from a content standpoint, I'm fairly happy with it. And it's definitely better technically than I can write. Man, this is really great. So let's go back over it and let's pick at it a little bit and see if we can't choose some ways to change it. The control room was a flurry of activity as the team of scientists prepared for their first trip. So the team of scientists prepared for their first. I don't like calling them a team of scientists. Um, I think maybe changing this to what we want to call them, right? Are we going to call them light riders or star skimmers or whatever? So the control room was a flurry of activity as the star skimmers prepared for their first trip. I like that a lot better. And then we explain that they're scientists by saying Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the lead researcher, stood at the front of the room, her eyes fixed on the large monitor displaying the countdown. She took a deep breath and turned to her team. All right, everyone, this is it. We've been working towards this moment for years. It's finally here. Are we ready? There was a chorus of affirmations from the team as they checked and double-checked their equipment. Dr. Rodriguez smiled and nodded, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. Good. Now let's go over the plan one more time. We'll be using our newly developed photon accelerator to ride a beam of light back to its origin. This will effectively transport us back in time to the moment the photon was created. From there, we'll be able to travel to any planet within the photon's range that existed at the time. Um, from there, I think instead of saying within the photon's range, right, we just want to say within range. As if we're taking a shuttle there or something, right? Because we know we're going to be in the vacuum of space. Obviously, you can't ride the photon all the way back to its origin, or you would end up in a star. So, um, Yeah. So we'll take out photon and we'll just say within range. Or we might even say within, what's a word to describe a vehicle they would be using? Within the capsule's range? Yeah, within the capsule's range. Or within the shuttle's range. The shuttle's range. It'll be a shuttle. That's it. We'll be able to travel any planet within the shuttle's range that existed at that time. She gestured to the monitor, where a map of the galaxy was displayed. Our target planet is Kepler 7, an Earth-like planet located 12 light years away. It's believed to have been home to an advanced civilization before it was destroyed by a supernova. We'll have exactly 1 hour on the planet before we have to return. I like that they're describing when they're returning, right? Because calculations could be made to figure out where all the potential debris between Kepler 7 and Earth could be in the event of, or in the span of that hour. So you have a potential to identify when a photon is going to move from Kepler 7 back to Earth without hitting any of those obstructions. And there's no reason really to explicitly talk about that in the story, right? It's sci-fi, it's fiction. We're just making shit up. But it's nice to know that it's reasonable, right? You don't want to have to suspend all belief or all disbelief. You want to have a reasonable suspension of disbelief. Okay. The team listened intently, their eyes wide with anticipation. Dr. Rodriguez took one last look around the room before turning to the countdown. All right, let's do this. Synchronize watches. The team reached their watches and pressed the button in unison. The countdown hit 0 and the accelerator hummed to life. A beam of light shot up from the device, enveloping the team in a bright, blinding light. And just like that, they were gone. So, um, I would want to say enveloping the shuttle, I think, because we want to show that the team is in a vehicle. Either that, or we just want to go directly to the planet, right? So let's go over the plan one more time. We'll be using our newly developed photon accelerator to ride a beam of light back to its origin. This will effectively transport us back in time to the moment the photon was created. From there, we'll be able to travel to any planet within the photon's range that existed at the time. So I think if we just cut this sentence off, right, back to the moment the photon was created, because really you could be riding that photon back to a planet, because light bounces off of a planet. We see distant planets. So let's just cut this off, and instead of using a vehicle, we'll keep that the beam of light envelops the team, and so they'll just be going on foot. Obviously, they'll have gear with them, and whatever. I mean, anything could be transported, right? This is fiction. So we'll take this sentence out, and we'll change the team of scientists to, I think we're going to call them star skimmers. And I think that's going to be good. I really like this as a first page. Then we need a name for this story. Let's ask Chat GPT. What can we name this story? Well, I am going to go ahead and copy this entire thing and put it into, there we go, because I don't want to lose it. So I put it in my Notion file. All right, what could we call this story? You can do it. I believe in you. You got this. Riding the Light, Photon Voyage, Quantum Time Travelers, The Origin Seekers. As they allude to the central concept of using photons as a means of transportation and the focus on traveling back in time. Another option could be The Last Civilization, which would be more focusing on the destination planet where they are trying to reach, and the potential of discovering a long-lost advanced civilization. Quantum Time Travelers, Riding the Light. I like Riding the Light. All right. Let's call the story Riding the Light. What should we call the team of scientists that are traveling to? What should we call the? Well, we'll just say, what should we call the team of scientists? It knows what the team of scientists is. It wrote it. The Light Riders could be a good name for the team of scientists, as it references the central concept of riding the light, and has a cool, adventurous ring to it. Another option could be the Photon Pioneers, the Quantum Travelers. Groundbreaking work using photons for transportation. See, this is why I liked Star Skimmers, was because, star alludes to light, which alludes to photons. The Light Riders is too much like riding the light. I don't like that. Photon Pioneers is absolutely not. The Quantum Travelers. What about Star Skimmers? Gives a sense of the team skimming through space and time, gliding across the stars. The name has a futuristic and adventurous tone. It fits well with the concept of traveling to distant planets using photons. All right, we're going to call them the Star Skimmers. I like it. I like it a lot. And I think that's what we're going to name the first thread as well. That's fantastic. So I'm going to go into my Notion book here, and I'm going to say we're going to call this Riding the Light, and the scientists are called Star Skimmers. All right, now that we have this, the other thing that I want to do is write a 2-sentence synopsis of the overall story idea. So we're going to put this in the channel when we create the book, and it'll just give us a little teaser something. Team of scientists, the Star Skimmers, use a newly developed photon accelerator to ride a beam of light back to its origin, effectively transferring them back in time to the moment the photon was created. Embark on a journey to a distant planet. Okay, this is super long. Don't like this. I think we're just going to stick with a team of scientists, the Star Skimmers, use a newly developed photon accelerator to ride a beam of light back to its origin. Just going to call that a day. That's really great. I am quite excited by that. And I'm impressed that it only took us about 20 or 30 minutes to get it to write it out. So let's make our adjustments, right? We don't want the team of scientists. We want the star skimmers. Prepared for their first trip. And then we want to cut out okay. Cut out that. I'm going to go ahead and create our thread. Edit. We're going to call this Riding the Light. We're going to create a thread. You're going to name that thread Star Skimmers. And the message is going to be here. Okay, that is horrible, horrible. Hate it. Can I put any random thing in there, and then I'll just edit this message. Oh yeah. There was also, I think, a spelling error or something in here. Let's see. Hmm, seems fun. So we'll save that, and then we will type in open. and let other people add. Fantastic. Brand new story. This is really fun. Okay, well, I'm happy with that one. I think that went remarkably well. It shouldn't have been that easy. And certainly, if you wanted to write a longer story, it would absolutely be more difficult because it's difficult to maintain the context of the story because eventually the AI forgets things. And so, writing a single page, especially starting a story that way, is going to be fairly easy. Something I want to do here is add a reaction. This is AI assisted. And since Dr. Emma Rodriguez is the protagonist, she's going to be female protagonist. Yeah, I dig. All right. Now let's see. So far, the library doesn't have any children's books. So maybe we can come up with an interesting children's story. Just something that can be kept PG. Um, when I was a kid, some of my favorite books were the Animorphs books. And then one of my favorite TV shows when I was really, really little was called Ghost Rider, where there was literally this like little poltergeist thing that followed this team of kids around while they investigated different things going on in their towns. And it would write things in the sky or on walls or whatever. And so they called it Ghost Rider. I didn't even know what ghost writing was back then. The first time I heard ghost writing, I thought it was something to do with ghosts because of that TV show. But I think maybe a kid's mystery story could be a lot of fun. We had the Hardy Boys and what was the girl detective? Oh, I don't remember. I'm a terrible person. But there were tons of kids mystery books when I was little. So maybe some sort of a an ongoing mystery story could be fun. Let's think. Let's write a book for kids age. Let's talk about a story for kids, about a mystery story for kids age 10 to 14. Oh, got an error again. This is just something that happens during high volume times with Chat GPT. You just have to be prepared to hit the refresh button sometimes. It's going to happen to you. There's not much you can do about it. The case of the missing diamond. Summary: when a valuable diamond goes missing from the local museum, a group of friends decide to investigate. They interview suspects, gather clues, and use their problem-solving skills to try and figure out who the thief might be. Along the way, they learn about the history of the diamond and the importance of teamwork. In the end, they're able to solve the mystery and return the diamond to its rightful place. That's important there. When you start talking about writing a kid's book, there's almost always some sort of a moral along the way, or you learn something. Got to learn about working together and the history of the diamond. So that's interesting. Hmm. So let's write the first page of this story. Give the friends names. Don't use names from existing popular literature. Case of the Missing Diamond, Chapter 1, The Disappearance, was a typical Tuesday afternoon when the news broke that a valuable diamond was missing from a local museum. The diamond, known as the Star of Africa, was one of the most prized possessions in the museum's collection and had been on display for over a decade. As soon as they heard the news, a group of friends, Mia, Jake, Ben, and Sophie, were determined to crack the case. Mia was the leader of the group and had a passion for detective work. Jake was the brains of the operation, always coming up with new theories and ideas. Ben was the strong, silent type and was the muscle of the group. Sophie was the artistic one, always looking at things from a different perspective. "This is the perfect case for us to solve," Mia said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We have to find out who stole the diamond and return it to the museum." "But where do we even begin?" Jake asked. "We start by gathering information," Mia replied. "We'll interview the museum staff and see if anyone saw anything suspicious. We'll also take a look at the security footage." With a plan in place, the friends set off to the museum to begin their investigation. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to solve the case and return the Star of Africa to its rightful place. As they entered the museum, the group was greeted by the museum's director, Mr. Johnson. "We're here to help with the investigation," Mia said, introducing herself and her friends. "We want to do everything we can to find the missing diamond." Mr. Johnson looked at them skeptically but said, "I'm glad you're willing to help. The diamond is worth a fortune and the museum's reputation is on the line." The friends set to work interviewing staff and studying the security footage, but as they delved deeper into the case, they realized that this was no ordinary diamond heist. There were twists and turns at every corner, and the more they uncovered, the more confusing the case became. But the friends were determined to find the missing diamond no matter what it took. They knew that the Star of Africa was too valuable to be lost forever, and they were determined to bring it back to its rightful place. So there's a lot that we could cut off on the end here. The friends set to work interviewing staff and studying the security footage. Actually, you could just stop with Mr. Johnson looked at them skeptically and said, "I'm glad you're willing to help. The diamond is worth a fortune and the museum's reputation is on the line." And then bammo, you could just cut it off right there. I don't really know if I like this, and I don't know if I want to keep it. Um, yeah. I honestly don't even know if I like the idea of the diamond heist and the museum thing or any of that. Or even writing a book that's about kids solving mysteries. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, this will stay here. We can go back and edit this. We can just change it completely. We can always come back to this if we decide. What would be an interesting concept? So the big deal here is that because these are going to be never-ending books, right? People are going to be forking off of them and writing their own stages and pages and stories and whatever. And you're going to go through and choose your own adventure. The most important thing is to write a first stage that can go on forever, right? As a concept, you want it to be open to not just being that one story, right? When the kids solve the case of the missing diamond, what happens next? And so it's more important to get the concept of, like the Hardy Boys. The concept of the Hardy Boys is that they are child detectives and they're going to go do their child detective-y thing, and it doesn't really matter. It carries on through multiple books, but the core concept of that story is these young detectives and their ability. Are they MacGyver types? Are they um, Are they Sherlock Holmes types? What kind of investigators are they? And then carry that through all of those stories. So here, sorry about that. Here we actually have an interesting paragraph because it describes Mia, Jake, Ben, and Sophie and who they are in the group, right? We've got Mia as the detective, Jake is the brains, Ben's the strong one, and Sophie was the artistic one, looking at things from a different perspective. So I like this sort of dynamic and the fact that it sort of assigned them roles. And that can just be carried through for as long or as short as whatever is possible. So, I don't know. But what is something that could be really fun? Herm. Let's see, what do we got here? Maybe we will stick with the mystery. Let's write the first page of a mystery story for about teenage detectives. About a group of 4 teenage detectives. What is an interesting event for them to investigate? Yarg. Hmm. Well, this was interesting. It was a dark and stormy night when the phone rang at the headquarters of the Teen Detective Society. 4 members of the group, Max, Emma, Jake, and Ava, were huddled together in the old musty couch, trying to pass the time on a boring Saturday night. "Hello," answered Max, the society's leader. "Max, it's Miss Johnson," came the frantic voice on the other end. "My daughter Emily has gone missing. Please, you have to help find her." Without hesitation, the Teen Detective Society sprang into action. They grabbed their raincoats and set out into the storm, determined to solve the mystery of Emily Johnson's disappearance. As they walked through the deserted streets, the detectives couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Emily was a popular and well-liked teenager, but it was hard to imagine anyone wanting to harm her. But as they drew closer to her last known location, a rundown abandoned factory on the outskirts of town, they began to suspect that there may be more to this case than they had originally thought. Upon arriving at the factory, the detectives were met with a locked gate and a sign that read, "Danger, keep out." Undeterred, they climbed over the fence and made their way inside. As they explored the dark and musty factory, they heard strange noises and saw strange shadows. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream coming from one of the rooms. "Emily!" they shouted as they ran towards the sound. When they reached the room, they found Emily tied to a chair, her mouth gagged. A man in black hood and mask was standing in front of her with a knife. "Who are you?" Max asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The man didn't answer, but instead he lunged at the detectives with the knife. The Teen Detective Society was in for the fight of their lives as they tried to save Emily and uncover the identity of her kidnapper. So again, both of these last two stories, it's trying to move too fast. I really don't like the pacing of this. I really enjoyed the pacing of that first story because it was just them going on this trip, and preparing for the trip and sort of an explanation. So here, let's so let's write the first page of a mystery story about a group of four teenage detectives. Tell the story of how they got the tell the story of what the case is and how they got on the case. Okay. So hopefully this will just keep it to the part where they learn about what's happening and decide to investigate, not actually going out and doing anything. The sun was setting over the small town of Willow Creek as four teenage detectives sat huddled together in a dimly lit room. They had been called to investigate a strange case that had been troubling the community for weeks. The group known as the Sleuths were a group of high school students who had a passion for solving mysteries and uncovering the truth. The case that had brought them together was the mysterious disappearance of a local businessman, Mr. Jack Thompson. He had been missing for over a month, and the police had been unable to find any leads. The sleuths had been called in by Mr. Thompson's wife, who was who was desperate for answers. Jeez. As they sat together, each detective pulled out their own notes and evidence. The leader of the group, a tall, confident teenager named Jake, spoke up. "All right, let's go over what we know so far. Mr. Thompson was last seen at his office on the night of his disappearance. His wife reported him missing the next day when he didn't come home. Police searched his office and found no signs of a struggle or forced entry." The second in command, a quiet and analytical girl named Emily, chimed in. "There were no signs of a ransom note or any other suspicious activity. It's as if he just vanished into thin air." The third member of the group, a short and energetic boy named Alex, added, "But we did find something interesting. One of the security cameras outside of Mr. Thompson's office caught a shadowy figure leaving the building around the time of his disappearance. It could be our suspect." Finally, the fourth member of the group, a charismatic and outgoing girl named Samantha, spoke up. "So we need to track down this figure and we need to track down this figure and figure out what it is, or who it is, and hopefully that will lead us to Mr. Thompson." The group nodded in agreement, ready to take on the case and uncover the truth. As they left the room, the sleuths were determined to find out what happened to Mr. Thompson and bring him home. Okay, I like this way more. This is a much, much slower pace. It brings us into the story, tells us about what's going on, identifies each of the individuals, gives them a little blurb to say, right? Tells us who they are, gives us a little bit about their personalities. I really, really like this. And this is the thing about using an AI, right? It doesn't take a terribly long time to get this down. But getting this page written, if I was an experienced writer, it took me, I don't know, about 20-25 minutes to get to a prompt that I like and that I can now edit into something slightly more usable. For example, I don't like that it keeps calling them teenagers. I would prefer to use something like a confident young man named Jake, or something like that, right? A short and energetic boy. I like that much more than a tall and confident teenager named Jake. I would prefer to call him a tall and confident young man. Um, or maybe even a tall and confident boy. Yeah, because that would fit more. Everybody else is being called boy or girl, so I'd probably just call him a tall and confident boy named Jake. Yeah, honestly, I don't see a lot of reason to change a lot of this. I'm going to change that teenager to boy, and then that's probably going to be it. Okay. Now we need to have a name for this story. What can we name this story? The Vanishing Businessman, A Sleuth's Mystery? Actually, from the TV show Sherlock Holmes, Watson writes the casebook of Sherlock Holmes. We might be able to call this something like The Sleuth's Mysteries or hmm, The Sleuth's Mystery Book, The Sleuth's Mystery Stories, Cases of the Sleuths. But The Sleuth's Mysteries. I like The Sleuth's Mysteries. The Sleuth's Mysteries. Fantastic. Okay, well, I am really having some problems with my allergies, so I think I'm going to call this one much, much shorter than normal. But we got a couple of good story starters in here. I'm going to add these into the Forever Adventures library. And again, if you want to help us write our never ending Choose Your Own Adventure books, I very much recommend coming and joining us on Discord, which is in the description. Um, Come on over, give yourself the reader or writer title. There are a couple of recorded YouTube videos on this channel to explain how to use the Discord and how we're organizing things so that you can move around relatively easily in the stories. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The project only started about 3 months ago, so there's not a lot on there yet. But the more people we get, the more the more people who are adding and writing and branching the stories, the larger the stories are going to get, the more interesting the stories are going to get. And like I said at the beginning, eventually I do want to go ahead and migrate the library over to its own website, which at some point I am building with actually Chat GPT is helping me out, so should be a lot of fun. But thank you all for stopping by, and have a great night.